Okay. So I want to do what we did last time, go over a couple features, 2 or 3, and then get you started on the CAD 2 assignment. Then next class, we're going to do a couple more features, continue working on the CAD 2 assignment. And then in a third class from now, you're going to be able to finish the CAD 2 assignment. It's a lengthier assignment than CAD 1. It gives you an opportunity to really explore a lot of the two-dimensional features that we're going to work with. So for today, maybe 10, 15 minutes, and free time for us to work on that CAD 2 assignment. So I'll discuss that in a moment, but I want you to make sure you're focused and paying attention. The features I show you today will absolutely save you time when it comes to designing what you're going to be making in the CAD 2 assignment itself. Okay, so I'm going to start a 2D sketch like we did last time. You can follow along with me. I'm going to choose one of my planes. It doesn't matter which of the planes again I start with. I'm going to choose the actual plane to start. Now, for today's class, what I want to go over are some of the things that we left off last class. We left off with last class. So let's start with this rectangle feature, and let's hit the drop down, please. And click the little drop down right below the rectangle. Take a look at all the options underneath the rectangle. There's a lot of them. There's a very lot of them. Now, you'll notice there are 4 of them alone for a rectangle itself. Then there's a couple features for what's called a slot. Then there's a feature for polygon, which is a word you should be familiar with. Right, polygon. We're going to focus on rectangle and polygon. The feature for slot could be useful when it comes to machining and manufacturing. So if you've ever seen like a crankshaft move or it rotates or a certain thing, these are what slots are really useful a lot. We'll talk about the shapes, but we won't go into all 4 of those features for today. So let's start with the 2-point rectangle. And let's hover over it. You'll notice again, like I said, there are 4 types of rectangles. So there's probably a reason for the different types of rectangles that exist as options here, as opposed to just the first one. So let's make sure we understand what each of these options represent. So in the first one, it looks like we're just defining the corner or 2 rather opposite corners. And that's all we're defining, 1 and 2. And if we look at the next one, we'll see here that for the second one, we're defining 3 different points. And if I can hover over it, give me a preview. There we go. Okay, using 3 points, this allows me to create the first, the second, and then the third by dragging it out. The third one gives me a center option first. Sometimes it's important that the center of your rectangle lines up with another corner of your page. Okay, so when you need the center of your rectangle to line up with something, you can specify the center first and then drag out and actually create the width and the height of that rectangle. That will be useful for sure in a future CAD assignment. And then finally, the 3-point center is similar to the last one, where we define the center, then we define the what we call the midpoint of one of the sides, and then a corner after it. Okay, so let's go through all these 4 features, practice them on your own as I'm doing them. So I'm choosing the 2-point center first, this one here, or rather, sorry, just 2-point first, just 2-point. And when I look at this, it tells me, remember, what to do. If I forget what to do, I always look down the bottom left. It tells me to select the first corner down here in the bottom left. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to choose the first corner. And then after that, it tells me just to select the opposite corner. What do you notice about this rectangle? Give me something about it that you notice. Notice it's interesting. Try it yourself. Try to make one. Maybe try to make a second one. And no matter what size you make for a rectangle for this option, what do you notice about all these rectangles? There's one thing they all have in common on this page. Sophia? Okay, the constraints show up for all of them, absolutely. It shows that the sides opposite each other are parallel. You see all the parallel symbols everywhere? So Sophia is referring to this symbol right here, which stands for parallel, and that is parallel to this side. They also all have this perpendicular symbol showing that it's a right angle. We also see this symbol, which shows a horizontal constraint. It sets this line to be horizontal here. That's this third one. So these 3 constraints all show up. That's very true, Sophia. But now, make if I click off like this. Now, what else is similar about all these rectangles? Something that's similar about all. Look at their orientation. Look at their orientation. Orientation means placement, angle, that kind of stuff. What do you notice about their orientation? You notice? Yeah, Danny, very good. None of them are diagonal, she said. And maybe go further and say they're all what? Parallel to the axes that are there. So they're all parallel to the XY axis, their sides. So this first rectangle type, you're not going to be able to put a rectangle at an angle like I'm pointing with my mouse right now. Okay, the first rectangle type will always create rectangles that have sides parallel to the X or Y axis, or the horizontal and vertical axis, okay? Now, let's take a look at the second rectangle option here, the 3-point. Okay, this 3-point creates a rectangle, like we just said, at an angle though. Okay, so let's start with the first point. Now, the second point creates one of my sides. And then the third point allows me to stretch this to make the third set, or the third and fourth side really here. So depending upon how I click my second side or my second click, I can make these rectangles similar to the first type by doing that. All right, I can create a rectangle still that is parallel or perpendicular to the axes themselves. But this gives me the opportunity also to see that I can create a rectangle at an angle with this option. Okay. And again, how am I doing this? I'm choosing the second type of rectangle for this. Okay, the 3-point rectangle as an option. Try it yourself again, please. Make sure you can see, try to draw some rectangles that are at slight angles to the axis that you have set. Any questions on the second rectangle option? You're just tinkering around right now. You're not making anything to dimension or anything that matters about size. We're just practicing using this feature. Okay, let's go to the third type of rectangle, please. 2-point center. Again, we specify the center, and then we move outward to specify the width and the height of this rectangle. So let's go ahead and choose the center point. Again, 2-point center here. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Move over, just have a little space. I'm going to specify the center first by clicking, then I'm going to move away. Now, for all of these rectangles, notice I have been arbitrarily choosing the dimensions. Now that we've done the first two, let's point this out. Look, what's highlighted in blue? The width is, right? So what does that tell me? It's highlighted in blue. When a dimension is highlighted in blue, what can I do? Spence? Yeah, I can edit the dimension by directly typing at that moment. So if I wanted to make this width 2.5 inches, I can simply type 2.5 at this point. 2.5. Now I can then press tab, remember that button tab, to go change the other dimension. Just like we did with the line and the angle for the line, the same thing. Press tab now, and it'll give you the height. And we can specify the height. Let's make that maybe, I don't know, 2.0. And I've specified not only the center point by plugging that in first, but now I've also specified the width and the height. 2.5 is the width, 2.0 is the height. So that was the center point rectangle. Notice it looks slightly different than the other rectangles. We see these dotted lines, which we'll call the diagonals of the rectangle, that intersect at the center point. Okay, there's my center. These other rectangles earlier, if you recall, we did not specify a center. We specified the corners earlier. Take a look again if you need to remind yourself. We specified one corner and then the next, like this. But for the corner point, right, or the 2-point corner rectangle, the first we started with, we can also give a dimension if we wanted to. 1.2, tab, 0.75. Right? I can do that. And now I've got that rectangle. Notice the rectangles that I specified dimensions for show up on the screen. Those dimensions should show up for you if you actually enter them. Now, the other rectangles, those have dimensions, they have lengths, but they're not specified because we didn't choose them. So right now, I could, if I want to, click the dimension tool again. Remember this tool we've talked about a couple of times now? I can choose the dimension tool and I can click any of these rectangles and I can go ahead and change their lengths. Okay, I can go ahead and change the height maybe of this part here. Okay, and I can go ahead and specify. So if I choose the dimension ahead of time as I'm making it, it will show up. If not, I need to choose the dimension tool and then click the line that I want to set the length for. Any questions so far? Any questions? Okay, let's go to this last type of rectangle, please. This is also a center point, but this allows us to choose the center and then make a rectangle that's at an angle. One that Danny was talking about before, okay? So let's choose this center point here, but at an angle. So I'm on the fourth option now. It's called 3-point center. I'll specify the center first. I'll move away and notice what it gives me. Okay, when I move away, it gives me an axis, it looks like, or a line, a dotted line. That'll be my width of my rectangle. And then from there, I can go ahead and click. And I can see now I can get a rectangle with the center, but a rectangle that has a center specified, but is not parallel to the axis. Instead, it's at some oblique angle. That would happen. So play around with that last rectangle option. On your screen right now, it should look like gibberish, right? You should have a lot of just rectangles on there. That's fine. You can zoom out, move around to give yourself some more space. Just to show the slot option next, okay, we'll go over the first one here. It creates what looks like an ellipse, but it's not an ellipse. I want to make that clear. This is not an ellipse. It may look similar to an ellipse, but an ellipse does not have lines that are parallel to one another. Take a look at where I'm pointing here. This line here and this line here, they're parallel to one another. That does not happen with an ellipse. That's important to notice. So let's choose this option for a slot. And then let's go ahead and choose the center point. It says select the starting center point. Let's do that first. Let's move away. It says select the center, select the end center point. I'll choose another option here. And then let's move up or down like this. And we'll see the slot grows as we move higher or lower. Okay, I'm going to choose more of a narrow one. So I'll click once more. And there's my option for what's called a slot. Again, it is different from an ellipse or from an ellipse. We'll notice this side here. Look at the constraint that's set. What does this symbol mean here? I mentioned it a minute ago. That red highlighted symbol in the middle there. What does it refer to? So here, parallel. So what in this case? Very good. To the opposite side, right here. These two lines are parallel to one another. How about this constraint? Anybody remember what this one means? We used this word already this year. I'll give you a hint. It was a type of arc that we created. Where the arc had a smooth transition set. Similar to fillet, similar. Fillet creates something like this. Fillet creates this constraint actually. But there was a word under the arcs. It was a tangent arc, tangent. This means again that this point is a point of tangency right here, this little yellow dot. And what that means is that this line smoothly transitions into this arc. It doesn't jut out like this. It doesn't cut in like that. It's a smooth transition into the arc. That's what the tangent constraint means there. So that's our feature called slot. Let's go to our last type of feature here under rectangle. We're going to skip the other slot options here, and we're going to go to polygon, please. Polygon. And when you go to polygon, take a look and notice it doesn't start with any sheet, just it says select the center of your polygon. But we're given options here. So can somebody tell me by using inspection, what do you think this option is here? The 6? What do you think that 6 is there? Take a guess. If we're creating a polygon, what about that polygon may be labeled as 6? And there are multiple answers, so take a shot at it. Pearson? The number of sides it could be. The angles, number of angles, which is the same as the number of sides, very good. The length of the sides, the width of the side, it could be any of those. So let's figure out what it is, right? Let's figure it out. So it's on 6. Let me click the center and move away. Okay, so what do you think it is? What did 6 represent? Or what did it represent based on this as you move away? Is it the length of the sides of the 6 or what is it? It looks like it's the number of sides. Count them, right? Count them if you have to. That is a hexagon there. Okay, so this is a 6-sided polygon, and you can specify the size of it by moving this out. Now, at first, you're going to say, well, what if I want to specify the length of one of the sides, right? All you got to do is click somewhere, and then you can use the dimension tool. Look at all these things that pop up, by the way. Okay, these have to do with vertices here. I can hit escape now, and I can choose the dimension tool, and I can dimension one of these sides. Okay, I can choose the dimension tool and dimension one of these sides. Now, what I'd like to do, if I want a regular polygon and I want to, they're all regular. If I want to specify the width of this, I should really make a polygon where this is parallel to the x-axis, because right now, this is giving me some sort of a height right here. Okay, or like not a height, a piece of a triangle. If I think of this, it's kind of giving me the leg of a right triangle. If I made this into a right triangle here, this is giving me the base of that right triangle. It's not really giving me the length of that side. So I'm going to recreate a polygon to show you that. And I'll notice here I have two options. I have inscribed and circumscribed here, two different options. I'm going to choose here. I'm going to move upward. I'm going to rotate this. Now I want this first side to be pretty much parallel to the x-axis. Now it is. Okay, I've created this side specifically parallel to this axis so that when I change its dimension, I know I'm changing the length of the side here. And if I up this to 2, I'll see the entire polygon grow. Okay, if I up this to, or if I decrease this, I should see all of the sides change. Why are all of the sides changing? I only change one. Why are all of the sides changing? Very good. So what, anybody know the word that Dan's thinking of? Equilateral, very good. This is an equilateral polygon. And by the way, another word for that is called a regular polygon. A regular polygon, meaning each side length is equivalent, hence equilateral. Hey, there's another word I could use also to describe this polygon. Anybody know it? Beside equilateral? One other word. Equiangular. There's only angles for the same stuff. Equiangular. When a polygon, I should say, let me make sure I'm saying this correctly. Mr. Paul and Mr. Donachek will yell if not. When an equilateral polygon is convex, which this is, not concave, that's not a juggling like that. When it's convex and it's equilateral, it should also be equiangular. Okay. Now, theoretically, I could create I think I can, and I'm just guessing right now, like this. Take a look. If I created a polygon like this is not convex, this is concave. Okay, see the angle in here? So this is a concave polygon, and theoretically, I can make all these lengths the same, and yet the angles wouldn't be the same, okay, for this polygon here. But for a polygon like this, that is convex, and we know that it's equilateral, will also be equiangular. Okay. Let's see, I want to check my checklist real quick. Today's day 4, rectangles, slots, polygons, construction lines. Okay, so let's talk about construction lines for a moment. I've already referenced this with a couple of you because you needed help or you needed a pointer in CAD assignment 1, and we use this option. So let's go to the line feature real quick, back to the beginning, line feature. Now let's go ahead and just draw a vertical line somewhere on our page. Let's hit escape. Now go ahead and right click that line, please. Right click it. Remember, right click is with your middle finger if you're righty, which is correct. Everyone here is righty. Yes, for the most part. I'm trying to think anyone lefties or that are using them. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and right click this, and we're going to choose construction as our option right here. And look what it does to the line. Okay, this is a very, very useful thing. Okay, very, very useful. You're going to need some form of a barrier, or maybe what we're going to use as a mirror line. So a construction line is very useful. It will not appear as a line on my page. It will just act as something I can refer to or set dimensions with respect to. Okay. Okay. Now, after that, I want to just take a look at these modify tools. There's a lot of them here. And I want to also point out, did I talk about chamfer with you? I know I talked about it with one section, but not the other. Did I go over this feature? I'm seeing some nods, yes, some no, so I'm not sure. I'll do it really quickly, but I think I may have already. But to reiterate what it does is you choose 2 of the sides that create a vertex, and it will pretty much take that corner, and instead of rounding it over, it'll create an edge like this. I referred to your desk when I talked about chamfer that day. So if I didn't, this might not be familiar. Touch the outside of your desk and see that the desk is chamfer. Okay, it's not a corner that comes to a rigid corner where you might, for example, if it's very sharp, cut yourself. All of these are chamfer. It acts as a rounding feature on your desk so that in case you fall into it or something, you don't cause yourself to get cut. So that's what chamfer does. Take a look at that bottom corner. Okay, it takes a corner like this, which comes to a point, and it makes it come to this edge like that instead. And I can set this dimension if I want to. Let me change this one here. Remember, this one says FX. which means it's a function of this length. So I need to change this length here. So if I up this to 0.25, I'll see that chamfer increase. Okay. The dimension I'm setting here is 0.25, and this dimension here is 0.25. All right, so before I go on, then let's go quickly over this last option here, which is point. Okay, yeah, Danny. Chamfer is under the drop down under fillet. That's why it's kind of hidden. So look next to fillet on the right. Hit that little arrow, and then you should see chamfer pop up. Yep. Thanks for asking that. Any questions on chamfer? Let's move on to point. The option for point allows you to do exactly that. Look, if I click on the page, it just puts points everywhere. Go ahead and practice yourself. Okay, this might become a very, very useful feature at some point in time. If, for example, hypothetically, I needed a circle to be at an exact location, I can use that point to refer to its center now. So I could choose like a circle now, and I can lock on to any of these points. See how it turns green now when I get near any of these points? So if I wanted a circle that's centered exactly right here, I could specify the point first, and then I can go ahead and make the circle. And notice the point and the center of the circle line up with one another right there. Okay. So the point option will be useful later when you make points here. Let's go to the modify section now. And we'll finish today with the modify section, and then we'll go on to CAD 2 and give you time to work on it. So the modify option is a lot here. So please bear with me and stay with me as we do this. So I'm going ahead and move out. I'm going to escape real quick. Okay. I'm going to start with the move option. I'm going to hover over it. I'm going to read what it says. If I take a look at it, it says, moves selected sketch geometry from one point to another with an option to copy. Okay. Now, the problem you're going to have with this is that sometimes you might set constraints, and constraints might constrain you or limit you from moving certain shapes. Keep that in mind. So if I go to move certain shapes, it may not allow me to, and I'll demonstrate that in a moment. Let me start first with one that likely will move. Okay. So I'm going to start with move. Most of these modify options have this similar box as this. It'll say select. Take a look at what's highlighted here, select. And it'll say select the geometry to move. And again, I chose this option right here for move. And it tells me to select the geometry. So let's say I wanted to simply move this point right here. I can click that point right there. And then it says base point. This option of a base point allows me to select what part of the polygon to make as my reference. So because I chose a point has no dimension to it, right? You think about a point here, we don't have any width, we don't have any length. So in this case, the point is only a location in space. So it's not going to matter what base point I choose. So if I just choose the point itself, again, after I click base point, I'm going to choose the same point. Then it allows me to just move it somewhere else. See the line that's connected? If I click somewhere else now, it'll simply move that point to that new place. And then I press done and I move my point. But that's not very useful, moving a point. So let's talk about moving a polygon instead. Okay, so I choose move here at the top. Bless you. I have to select now the geometry that I'd like to modify or move. So I'm going to go ahead and select the legs of this polygon. And I'm going to continuously select them one at a time. Okay, so I've selected all the sides of this polygon already. Do the same for yours, please. Any polygon, whether it's the rectangle, whether it's the concave polygon we created, whether it's one of your convex regular polygons, just simply select all of the legs of that polygon. When you're done with that, choose base point, please. Now, before you choose which part of the polygon to set as your base point, here's what I want to talk about in the options. You can choose the center and everything will move with respect to the center. You can choose one of the vertices and everything will move with respect to one of the vertices. But it's your choice as an option here, what to make the base point to move from. I'm going to start with the center. It says this geometry being edited is constrained to another geometry. Would you like to remove those constraints? And in order to move this polygon, I'm going to have to choose yes, because I already set a constraint on this polygon earlier. So I'm going to choose yes now. That will allow me to now move this polygon. And I'm moving it from the center because I chose the center as my base point. So I know that this length from here to here is measured from the center, and that's where it's moving with respect to. So I can go ahead now and just click to finish or to find my final center point for this polygon. Okay, and it's moved there now, and now I can choose done. Okay, notice what happens though? It leaves this little point behind the center. Okay, it doesn't move the center with it, with the polygon itself. Let's choose another option for move here. And let's go with a rectangle that has no dimensions on it at all. So I'm going to choose this one right here. Find a rectangle that has no dimensions on it. Okay. And then go ahead and choose base point, please. When I choose base point, I'm going to notice there's no center of this rectangle, right? Again, we're using the move option for the third time now. We've chosen select. Once we're on the select tool, we've chosen the four sides of one of our rectangles that does not have lengths on it. And notice I chose one without a center point here. So when I choose base point now, I can't select the center point anymore. So I likely want to use one of my vertices. Take a look at your vertices. They'll turn green when you get to them. Okay, choose one of your vertices. And then from there, it'll move this with respect to that vertex. So I chose the upper left vertex. So I see a line connecting that yellow X and the green dot, referring to my new upper left corner. Click, please, and it will move. Now, theoretically, you might want to create a copy of something. And to do that, you would choose this copy option. But right below it, in a minute, we're going to use this copy option here anyway. So this is kind of redundant. If I want to move something, I'm choosing move. If I want to copy it, I'll choose copy. If I want to copy it with another copy, it wouldn't make sense to choose move and choose this option, to be honest. So I would not choose this box if I wanted to copy it. Instead, I would go to the copy option. So let's go through the copy option. Look, take a look at this. It looks identical to the last options, right? Select it, then choose a base point, and then move it. Okay, now it says also here clipboard, which means you can copy this option to your clipboard, allowing you to then paste it several times over if you want to. So let's go ahead and select the sides of this rectangle, please. Let's choose base point, please. So again, I've selected all the sides of one of my rectangles, and then choose base point. Pick whatever base point you want. If you want to use the center, because you used a rectangle that has a center point, you can. If you want to use a corner, you can do that. And click one of those, please. And now watch what happens this time. Take a look at my screen first. Every time I click, it creates a copy. I can make as many of these as I want. This might be useful if you're doing what? What might this be useful for? Give me an example of a design, maybe something that you're drafting that you might want to make several or many copies of the same thing. Again, a chair for a floor plan, that's a good example. A window for a building. Windows are consistent. And we'll talk about other patterns we can use for windows as well. Okay, but yes, a copy option could be very useful. I would not want to make the same thing 8 or 9 times, right? Okay, and then I can press escape and I've got all my copies on my page. Okay, any questions for move or copy? Rotate does what you think it would do. Okay, it'll rotate your object. So let's choose again the object to rotate itself. So I'm going to choose one of my copied rectangles here. I've chosen the 4 sides of this rectangle. Then it says center point again. I'm going to choose that. Now notice I don't have a center of my rectangle, so I can choose one of my corners instead, or one of my vertices. It says this geometry is edited as being constrained to other geometry. Would you like to remove the constraints? I'm going to hit yes in order to edit this. And now look what happens. Okay, because I chose the upper left corner, look what it's doing. It's swinging like a door hinge. It'll allow me to rotate this around the corner that I chose as my center point. Again, I chose the upper left-hand corner as my center point, and now it's rotating. And look what I can do. I can specify the angle right here. Highlighted in blue means I can type right over it. So if I want to specify an angle and I don't want it to be arbitrary, I can just type in 45, for example. And then I can press enter to apply it. And now my object is at a 45-degree angle. So if I hypothetically did some work and then recognized afterward, oh, I needed that to be at an angle, this rotate option could be very useful. You can make a copy of it also. So watch what I'm going to do next. I'm going to select a different one, okay? Do it with me. Select another one of your rectangles. Then I'm going to choose as a center point, again, one of my vertices. It's going to say it's constrained to certain things. I'm going to say, let's remove those constraints. Yes, I want to. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the copy option here and watch what happens. Every time I click, probably only did it once. Every time I click, it'll create another option or it'll create a copy. So the original rectangle is still here. And I see the copy right there, as opposed to the last time when I rotated this and made a new rectangle, the original rectangle was indeed gone. Okay, it was gone. Let me hit done. Last one for today. Last one, we'll do trim. Next class, we'll go to the rest of these, and then we'll get into the pattern options here as well. You could explore the pattern options today if you'd like to, okay, but we'll get into the next class. So let's finish on trim, please. Choose trim. Take a look what it does. Trim is a very, very useful option. Let's say you create a circle, but you only want a half of the circle. You just put a line down the middle and you can trim the second half. So let's go ahead and choose trim, please. And move around your screen. And as you move around your screen, please look at what happens. You can trim little pieces off. Trim little pieces off. Trim another piece. Trim this last little section off here. Okay, you can trim little pieces everywhere. And usually the pieces you can trim are things where there's intersections. Find an intersection, please. Find where two of your polygons overlap and explore the trim option. It can be very, very useful. And some of you, I think actually one or two of you might have used it on CAD assignment number 1. Let me demonstrate what I meant about like a half of a circle for an example. Here's a circle and I want only half a circle, but I don't want to use the arc feature. I can simply put a line down the middle of this, down the middle of the circle, and then I can use the trim option and I can trim the bottom half, and there's a half a circle. Right? So I can create a half a circle like that instead of using the arc. So as you notice, there are many ways to create the same object or shape. It's up to you to decide as you work on your projects which option or which route is the most efficient or effective for you. Okay. So what I'd like you to do now is to open your iPads and open up CAD assignment number 2. Okay, is anybody on the My Last page yet? Can you tell me, is it visible there? Is CAD assignment 2 visible? Not yet? Okay, let me make it visible then. I'm going to stop recording at this point.